Dr. Diego Gutierrez. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's actually Jack was asking me before we even did this. He's like, "Do we call him Dr. Diego Gutierrez?" And I was like, "Well, he is a doctor. If I was a doctor, I would want to be called doctor." So
it's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, that's huge. And you've achieved quite a bit in your life, and where have you been now? And a lot of people haven't gone that same route. A lot of people haven't had the same views as you. But the fact that you've been in the MLS, you played professional soccer, you played for the Chicago Fire, Kansas City, and then you were even on Team USA, playing with some major people in competition.
Yeah.
It's huge. But it all started kind of when you were younger. You didn't even live in the U.S. You actually came here from Colombia.
Right.
What was the transition like? What was the culture differences, friends, meeting new people, even playing soccer?
No, it was huge. And by the way, let's start where with your original question. Yeah, do call me doctor.
Yeah.
recently, involved with the dissertation process, and so it's such a long process and so painful, really, that. We those of us that go through the process, we kind of, we jokingly say that that we definitely earn it, right? So anytime 100%. You have an opportunity to have people address you as doctor, especially students, then you should do that. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
As far as the transition, it was massive, as you can imagine. I mean, moving from state to state here can be traumatic for kids.
Mm-hmm.
If you move from California to Florida, or from California to New York, or anywhere else, anytime you're uprooting somebody's upbringing, it can be quite painful or quite beneficial. Right?
Yeah.
And so mine was a little bit of both. I was born and raised in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
I started playing soccer when I was 3 years old, but it just happened that at an early age I started noticing that I was actually better than everybody else, and so.
This was in Colombia?
At age 12 in Colombia, I was playing U15. And at age 13, 14, I was playing U17. So I knew that I was, just because I was playing up, it wasn't just because I was good, but I really enjoyed it, right? And so that brought a lot of opportunities, and it gave me the opportunity to come here to the U.S. and to get an education, which was originally what my parents brought us here for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was...
And how old were you when you came? Sorry.
I was 18.
You were 18?
Yeah, but I hadn't finished high school yet. And so I had to come here and learn the language and position myself to try to get a scholarship.
So that couldn't have been easy for you.
It was difficult. It was very difficult. I mean, imagine changing high schools, your junior, your senior year of high school, and being put in a place where you don't even speak the language.
Exactly.
So it was definitely hard.
Yeah. One major thing is changing high schools. I changed from one high school to the other my sophomore to junior year, but one thing that you had to overcome is just the language barrier.
Yeah.
That's huge. A lot of people don't really realize how hard it is kind of to get along or even talk to people or have the confidence to talk to people, especially when you don't know that language.
Well, a lot of kids, I think, have one of the main challenges is speaking to adults in their own language.
Oh yeah.
And so imagine at that age having to learn a second language. It can be very difficult. But I'm a huge believer in this, though. As I found out, you're put in life in situations where you're either you're gonna sink or you're gonna swim.
Sure.
One of the two. And I chose to swim.
Yeah.
And I was able to, pretty quickly, within 6 months, my English was good enough to where I was going to be able to take college courses.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, that took some applying and took some discipline, but I was carrying both soccer and school and the language and adapting to the American culture, and it worked out pretty well.
Sure. And, I know something that you mentioned before last time you were here is you find education, something that you enjoy. You enjoy, kind of educating yourself in every type of way. So... were you always like that, or because a lot of, especially kids our age, in their 20s, have a
very hard time to just focus on school.
Exactly, have those things that they really have a passion for, but you found that at an early age. Well,
sure.
Were you always wanting to educate yourself more, or was it at a time period?
No, I was one of those kids that hated school, hated going through the process, hated having to study for tests, all those things, because the main thing that I was concerned about is I just wanted to play, right? Knowing that soccer was such a short career, I wanted to take advantage of my time, and at 17, 18, I was already signing pro contracts, and I just wanted to do that. Thankfully, my mother had, 20/20 vision, and she said, you know what, this is a finite career, and you're going to need something that you're going to need to fall back on, further down the road.
Sure.
And I didn't really understand that until I was actually married with kids. I knew I was always inquisitive and curious about a lot of different topics, and I was always a kid that instead of watching the action movie, I was always watching the documentary. But I didn't know that was actually my curiosity about learning, right?
Sure.
And so, not really appreciating formal education, I went off. I actually went to college for 2.5, almost 3 years, and turned pro after my junior year. Went to Europe for a little while, then came back, and right around that time, MLS was starting.
Yeah.
And so I was the 13th pick in the draft. 2 years later, I'm married. A year after that, I already have a child. So I started a family pretty early. And it was probably a couple of years after that when I realized that, if something goes wrong, I still got to be able to pay the bills.
Sure.
Right? And I have to have something that's going to help me get there. And it kind of, I started talking with my old coach, one of my life mentors. And by the way, guys, always have a mentor. Always look up for a mentor,
sure.
Right? One of my life mentors said to me, you ought to start taking courses while you're playing. That way, when you're done playing, you'll already have at least your bachelor's degree. And that's what I started doing. So 10 years after I actually left school, I was graduating. And
awesome.
Let me tell you a quick sidebar or side note story there. When I left, you guys remember originally the purpose of coming here to the U.S. was so, from my parents' perspective, so that my brother and I could study.
Okay.
And so when I left school, I always felt convicted in the fact that I never finished, and there was some business left undone, and I owed to my parents that degree, right? And so 10 years, as I mentioned, 10 years later, I continued taking classes, and I actually graduated. I was able to fly my mom to Kansas City to watch me receive that diploma.
Wow.
My wife and my kids.
And this was when you were in the professional league. This
yeah,
is when
I was
you were
already
in
playing.
MLS.
I've been playing for 10 years already.
Yeah. And that's extremely rare, especially at a.
It's very rare.
When you're playing a professional sport, you kind of already think, all right, your life is set, you're done, you're ready, your future is already set. But you decided to kind of go back and go to school, which is huge. You don't see that ever, especially with people our age.
Well, there's two things there. One, I wish I could take credit for all of it, but I sincerely can't. One is the fact that I was curious about what was next, right? So I knew that I was probably going to play until I was 33, 34, 35 years old, but I always wanted to know what was next. What am I going to do after
Seeing
that?
Bigger picture.
Right?
Yeah.
That was one. Two was I always had one or two mentors that were challenging me about, okay, you got to push your limits. If this is your comfort zone, then you have to go beyond that.
Yeah.
You have to go push yourself past that.
Yeah.
Find out the things that you're passionate about. Find out the things that you're good at. Find out the things that you love to do. Because it's not the same thing, by the way. I had
100%.
teammates that were playing professionally. They were really good at soccer, but they hated the sport. They hated their job.
Yeah.
Which is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Because especially in a sport, like soccer, where you need creativity, where you need to be on the ball and thinking all the time, you need to be happy in order for your best game to come out and express yourself, right?
100%.
Right. And these guys didn't really appreciate. Yeah. And so, being good at something and being in something that you love are completely different things.
100%.
In a perfect world, then you'd be doing for a living what you love, which is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling, especially when people, like you said, professionals aren't liking what they do. That's crazy because you can't. Yeah. It's hard to concentrate on a sport that you don't even love.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that
goes with work in general. I mean, many people who work in any kind of industry, a lot of the people go into an industry that, they're just comfortable with instead of really enjoying or loving the thing that they're really doing. So, to have somebody who got an accomplishment and who did what they liked doing and still able to manage school on top of their plate and get the other achievements done that you've done is really something, amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It hasn't been easy, by the way. It's the type of sacrifice, and it's always, I think my competitive nature also, when somebody tells you, see if you can do this or see if you can do that. Challenge yourself to do that. You know what I mean? You really don't have police on top of you, or your mom or your dad is going to be saying, are you going to do this or are you not going to? But it was that competitive nature that always kept pushing me about, okay, well, I have my bachelor's degree. I should really go out and get an MBA.
Yeah.
And I got that.
Yeah.
And then I went, well, after the MBA, I should probably go out and get a doctorate. That would be kind of cool. But can I do it? Right? And I know what it meant at the time. It meant very little sleep. It meant working full time, doing TV, doing whatever with the sport, doing radio. And then on top of that, trying to be a dad, trying to be a husband. And then on top of that, trying to go to school full time.
Sure.
It was going to be, I was going to be burning the candle at both ends. And I essentially did for 4 years. So,
yeah.
There were a lot of months where I was sleeping 3 hours a night.
Yeah.
But it was the sacrifice that I needed to go through in order to achieve what I did.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really understand, the discipline that you have to really put in. That's in anything. That's in working out and just dieting. A lot of people don't have discipline. Just staying focused on one single thing and keeping their mind to that one thing.
There's another thing, and I think I don't want to characterize it as a generational problem, but it's a problem that we, especially in my capacity as a professor, I see more and more, is that I think younger generations want that instant gratification, right?
Oh, 100%.
They want to be able to just press a button and get results like that without understanding that, man, a lot of times you have to fail many times, try different things until you finally get traction.
Yeah.
And that is something that our parents, right? My parents, myself, were actually really good at. When I say myself, I mean my generation, your dad's generation, and mine. Having to fail and being okay with it.
Yeah.
And so I think our younger generations have an ultra sensitivity to that that failure.
Yeah.
It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
As long as you're learning from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Completely
And
agree.
when you pick up, the things that you did wrong and the things that maybe I'm not good at this, maybe I should approach it a different way.
It's the only way to really learn.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right? I had a coach, by the way, that used to say, a loss is not a loss unless you don't learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so you got to be able to look back and see what you did wrong.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think right now is extremely major, especially with young kids. People are getting participation medals.
Yeah,
that's one of the craziest
100%.
things. It's one of the craziest things. It's just crazy that you're gonna get a participation medal, not for winning, but for just
signing up and
just
being
for
part of the
being
team.
there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't really understand that you have to fail in order to lose. You have to go through a lot of sacrifices, the discipline, the failure in order to. And Michael Jordan, he ended up, I forgot some major quotes from what he's had, but he said he's missed 100 shots but whatever.
Michael was cut from his high school team. Right?
Yeah. So, the failures that come in life is you can't look at it as a failure. Yeah. You have to look at it as a learning experience.
Right.
What are you going to take away from that mistake or that something that you didn't do right? What are you going to take away from it and learn from it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something huge that you did. But not only that, you were able to play with major players like Landon Donovan. You played against David Beckham
Several times. Yeah, of course.
That's crazy. Some of the best players in the entire country. What was that like? The competition level. Going into those games, or did you get to talk to them? Did you get to know them a little bit better before playing them, or?
Yeah, I would say that at the professional level, at the MLS level, when you get to the major leagues, it's almost a fraternity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You play against the guys so many times. I played in the league for 14 years, and so you play against some familiar faces so many times that you get to know guys a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you take the best of the best, and now those American players, become Team USA, right? And some of the guys that play in Europe, and so it becomes a different relationship because now you are, the guys that you're, kicking each other with, every weekend, you're now teammates with the national team.
Yeah.
And so, we get to know each other a little bit, but that competitive fire is always there.
Yeah.
And a lot of trash talk, by the way.
That's what I was gonna ask you. That I was actually watching Zlatan. I can't even pronounce his last name. Yeah, I can't pronounce his last name, but it is funny. I was actually watching a video the other day, and someone comes up to him and he's just like, "What nickname do you prefer?" And he's like, God would be the best. So, you see a lot of trash talking and everything like that. Yeah. Were you ever like that, or were you just more calm? Were you more relaxed?
Let's put it this way. My attributes as a player, I was very technical. I was skilled, but I was 5'7", 150 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. And so my attributes as a player were more a thinker and an organizer on the field. Mm-hmm. Than anything else, right? Landon was a guy that was extremely pacing and quick, mm-hmm. right? You had other guys that just had physical attributes and other qualities. Mine was just directing people and being able to pull the team together.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was able to play for so long.
I remember one time actually with my dad, we went to go watch one of your games, and Landon Donovan, he was going across and he was, talking to people and he was signing autographs. And I was like, John, and I thought his name was John. I'm like, John Donovan. He wouldn't come up to me. I'm like,
I wonder why.
What the hell? I'm like, this guy won't even talk to me.
That's why you're such a good wrestler.
Yeah, I don't even know about
wrestling was your sport. Soccer, you didn't even know Landon.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know his name. But and then I went to my dad and I was like, the hell, John Donovan wouldn't even say hi to me. Like, John Donovan? What are you talking about? I was like, but the competition, it's a major thing. The smack talk, you see it even with the best players sometimes. Sure. But you were able to kind of compose yourself. You were able to kind of sit still and relax and.
Well, not always.
Not always.
I wouldn't say. I mean, I had a ton of yellow cards, and because I was just so competitive.
Yeah.
When the game got tough, I would probably say that a lot of my competitors, guys on other teams, they knew that on the day I was going to be a tough player to play against, mm-hmm. right?
Sure.
Well, and that's what you want. You're a player who doesn't only just have skill; you have that mindset to know the game very well.
Right.
And so when you become like that, you're a dangerous player in the industry.
Absolutely. Being strong mentally, I think that was one of probably my biggest characteristics, because guys that were going to be on the opposite side of the field as me, they knew they weren't going to have an easy game.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what, a lot of people also look at what other players bring to the table. And you were definitely someone who brought quite a bit to the table, brought a lot to the team and everything like that. And then when did your career really start taking off? I know you started off with Kansas City and then you kind of transitioned to Chicago Fire. What was that whole difference like, going to different teams?
Yeah, it was interesting because, and that's a great question. My career started off with a bang. I actually had a short stint in England before I came back to MLS. And when MLS started, I actually played the very first game in Kansas City's MLS history. I was on the field that day.
Okay.
Right? And so that's almost 20-something years ago, 25 years ago. But having grown up, having finished high school around the area, it was great. It was a great setup for me because my parents were living in Kansas City, and so it was an opportunity to play in front of my folks, which I hadn't done, a lot previously.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool. The first year was great. I came in second in voting and Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
The second year, the week before the season opener, I blew my knee.
Oh, wow.
So the 1997 season, I was out the entire year.
Did you get any surgery or anything?
Oh,
like
yeah.
that?
I had to have full reconstruction. It was a nasty injury.
What was the surgery on?
It was my PCL, my MCL, and my LCL. I blew everything in my knee except my ACL.
How long did that take to kind of recover and everything?
18 months.
Wow.
So basically, I missed the 97 season. In that season, at the end of the season, there were two new teams coming into the league. One was Miami, one was Chicago. And so I had a ton of family in Miami. But people were doubting that I was going to actually be left exposed and eligible for the draft. See, because when there's new teams, when there's an expansion draft, then teams get to protect 10 players, and the new teams get to pick from the rest of the guys, right?
Sure.
And so because I was injured, my team, Kansas City, thought there's no way anybody's going to pick him because he's nowhere near being ready for the next season.
Sure, especially with the injuries.
With the injury,
Yeah.
right? And I ended up being left exposed, and I was taken 5th in the expansion draft.
Wow.
But I was actually on vacation in Colombia doing therapy, doing all this stuff with my wife, and I got a call from Bob Bradley, who was the U.S. coach for a couple of World Cups. I got a call from Bob, and he said, "Hey, listen, I just took you in the draft, and I wasn't even watching or listening." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to Chicago?" And he's like, "Yeah, we picked in Chicago." I'm like, "Okay." So
Was
Miami
that more
didn't
of
work out. What?
Was that more of an exciting moment, or was that more like
No,
a...
again, if I said if I was going to be picked, I wanted to go to Miami because I had a ton of family.
Yeah.
So I got taken to Chicago. I knew nothing about Chicago. I knew it was cold up here.
You don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
It's all different.
But,
depending
you know,
on
it turned out to be one of the great moments of my life was being picked by Chicago. Why? Because, you know, I got to play for a great coach that really believed in me. I got to grow, you know, relationships as brothers with guys like C.J. Brown and Chris Armas and Peter Novak and, you know, Krzysztof Stoichkov and guys that, you know, were legendary in this league,
Sure.
right? And, you know, I still love those guys like my brothers. You know, and that's by the way, that's one of the beautiful things about sports is that you build relationships with guys that are just beautiful people. People that you know are competitive, that are disciplined, that have a lot of qualities that you yourself have.
Sure.
And not only that, like, you get to see the growth from the beginning because you really started out almost when it all kind of happened. So you get to see how all that really progressed from day one almost to even now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you see that growth? Are you excited for the, you know, more growth as what's coming in, or how much has really changed since the start of...
And not only for yourself, but even for the MLS. The MLS over the years has grown a significant amount. You know, they're having players from, you know, countries coming over, different countries coming over.
Yeah, it's insane. So, the very first year of the league, I remember we averaged about 13,000 fans per game, something like that. The second year, the novelty factor was gone, right? So, people had come out and watch some games, but they weren't really wanting to buy season tickets. So the attendance actually for the entire league declined. And there were probably 7 or 8 years of real hardship about, is the league going to fold, you know, because teams were dropping.
Sure.
And it wasn't until probably 2004, 2005 that the league started really picking up. The arrival of David Beckham did a whole lot of things commercially, in you know, as far as publicity was concerned, you know, for sponsorship dollars and so on. I would say that's probably MLS 2.0, right?
Yeah.
So the very beginning was 1.0. Then when Beckham arrives, it's 2.0. Now the league is a completely different league, right?
Yeah.
We are now in the top 5 leagues in the world for many metrics, you know, in terms of attendance, in terms of viewership, in terms of consumption, merchandising. There's, I mean, the Spanish League, the English Premier League, the German Bundesliga.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of leagues that surpass MLS as far as consumption is concerned. But the growth potential here continues to be the great great opportunity for world
Definitely.
football.
It's growing at a rate that's, you know, unbelievable. And also, actually, Zlatan, the guy that I was talking about earlier, he actually ended up even turning down a $100 million contract with China to sign with LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's who turns down $100 million?
Well, there's a couple of factors that I think, you know, really play well for MLS. One is it's intriguing to a lot of top players, right? 2 is the money has gotten better and better and better. Beckham got a $250 million deal 12 years ago, right?
Sure.
Which is great. Now, guys, I mean, steadily, the average salary in the league continues to increase. So it's actually feasible for kids to come out of college and get paid a whole lot more money than they were 10, 15 years ago,
Sure.
right? I had to go through those pains where, I mean, I was barely making more than I would have at a regular job, right? But that's what being a pioneer kind of gets you.
Sure.
Right? Now you fast forward to now, kids are making a lot of money.
Sure, and not only that, but you were actually enjoying a lot of, what Jack was saying earlier. A lot of people don't enjoy their jobs. A lot of people go to their work and they don't
wake up in the morning and they're not feeling enthusiastic about going in. They're just doing their day-to-day job just to be able to support themselves or their family. But when you really enjoy yourself, and especially doing what you do, it changes who you are, and just you see that progression in what you're doing and everything, and it's very exciting to see. So
again, it takes us back to doing what you love, right?
Yeah.
If you're able to find something and tap into something that you really, really love, you're gonna find ways to grow professionally as a person, and it's gonna be contagious to the people around you as well. And so, if let's say doing podcasts, right, is what you really love and what you really want to do, and you actually become very good at it, you're going to find ways to become better and better and better and better. And what that does in turn is it empowers people around you, right? And your attitude, your professionalism, your perspective on life actually becomes contagious. Yeah. And you're going to be one of those guys that people really want to be around.
Sure. Yeah, and that's one another thing, a lot of people kind of don't really, especially a lot of people our age, in their 20s or in their early teenage or in their late teenage years, they don't really have goals. They don't have things to look forward to. Maybe it's going to college and finishing off college, but going to parties every single weekend, and that wasn't you. That wasn't anything what you were interested in. You were very focused on one thing, or not I don't want to say one thing, but a few things very specifically.
You set some goals out there to almost achieve. To kind of.
Well, I set those goals out early, but let me say this: I don't think that if you don't set goals, there's no way you're going to be successful. I don't believe that.
100%.
If I were to say something, right? If somebody asked me, what would you tell the younger generations? What kind of advice would you give? I think the number one thing that I would do, and I tell this to my kids all the time, is you have to be able to recognize yourself and get to know yourself in a deep way. Meaning, you got to take personal inventory and really be honest with yourself, right? If I myself are not any good at podcasts, I probably shouldn't be investing all of my time doing podcasts.
Sure.
Right? And a lot of times, by the way, it's a thin line, because a lot of times people will tell you that you're not good at it. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to recognize it on your own. Right?
Yeah.
But if you're able to recognize those personal traits, and you're able to sort of organize your life and then set some targets and set some goals along the way, I think that's the only way to really grow.
Yeah, definitely. Just setting out those goals.
Yeah.
And, I think that's major in everything.
And I do think that's a very important thing to just have people understand, is even while you have so much on your plate, as long as you set those, like you were saying, like as long as you have somewhat of a mindset of kind of where you want to go, I think you'll kind of automatically kind of gravitate towards what's going to take you to that place.
Sure.
So definitely, 100%. But it was awesome. Speaking to you, talking to you. I would definitely love to have you. I know we're cutting short with the time, but I would love to have you back on.
Yeah.
Anytime. Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me.
It was an honor having you and talking to you and getting to know you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, so thank you.
Invite me back sometime soon.
We definitely will. Just give us a call.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Cool.